deal. Because that shell, it's not just calcium carbonate like oyster shell. It's got magnesium in it, and it's got this whole matrix of different calcium ions that is pretty much a perfect meal. So consider tossing the whole egg into the bunnies. and little chicks will eat those eggshells. If they're crumbled up and they can get their little beaks around, they'll snarf them down because they've got to build their bones up pretty fast. So, okay, next slide. Now, this goes into our eggs equal. This is from the Mother Earth News, the famous study, Cheryl Long. And by the way, Cheryl, help me with some of these slides here today. I'm not going to.
The math is wrong on that.
Huh?
They had the math wrong. They never fixed it, but I was one of the people that was in that, and it was 0.21 omega-3 for conventional eggs, 0.66 for the free-range ones, which is 3 times, not 2 times.
But it's better. But it's better cholesterol. Okay, well, let me get that from you afterwards. I like to correct that. But I'm not going to read these ratios. But the Egg Board used to routinely say over and over and over, an egg is an egg is an egg. And of course, the tobacco companies got up and said that nicotine was not addicting before Congress. So there you have that. Now, one of the things, if we're going to combat nutritional poverty, and you know, we've got the USDA has come out with the definition called food deserts. We have a nation of food deserts. Have you heard this? Yes. And a food desert is when you've got these little food marts, but there's no fresh produce or fresh products in there. And believe me, there's a lot of them in the U.S. So if we're going to really combat nutritional poverty and nutritional injustice almost, where do you think we're going to be able to do that from? Where can you get eggs from?
Your backyard.
Thank you. They don't have to travel 1,200 miles to a feedlot. They don't have to have any oil at all to be produced. And it's one of the most highly nutritious, easily digestible forms of protein on the planet. And healthy. So, I think next slide was a. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about eggshells. Now, I've partly made this up. And I first heard the term from Carl Hammer at the Vermont Compost Company, but I didn't get a definition from Carl, so I couldn't stop thinking about it, so I went ahead and made it up. And you're like the third audience that's ever heard this. So an eggshed, you know what a watershed is? What's a watershed? Okay, so and now we're talking more in terms of food sheds. You know, you live within your food shed, which is local foods, of course. So I'm defining an eggshed as the number of eggs consumed by a community or a group. And we could be this group here, it doesn't matter. Next slide, please. So here's the numbers. Stick with me there. It's really easy math. We can say that the average person, this is from the Egg Board, eats about 256 eggs a year. I eat a lot more than that, I can tell you. But can we round that number down to 250? The average person eats about 250 eggs a year, average, okay? The average hen lays about 259 eggs a year. That's commercial, but some of the heritage ones can get up to 230, 240. I mean, they're right in there if we get those numbers back up from the heritage breeds. So can we round that also down to 250? So one hen for one person, okay, to meet their per capita egg. Is that fair? You got it? You with me? Oh, you guys are good. Next slide, please. So what if we had a population of 30,000, and I chose 30,000 because that's the population of Rockbridge County, my home county. It's a small county. So could we meet the egg shed for that county? Well, here's what you do. Here's the numbers. That county would eat 30,000 people, would eat 250 eggs a year. 7.5 million eggs! Criminy, how can we ever produce that many? Dang, but run the numbers. If say just 3,000 families, 10%, if only 10% of the population had 10 hens in their backyard, you take 250 eggs times 3,000 times 10 hens and you get 7.5 million eggs. That's doable, isn't it? 10% of the population, 10 hens, that's no big deal. Huh? Meet the egg shed. Next slide, please. Okay, so now what if we couldn't get 10% of the population to have 10 hens because the ordinance says you can only have 3 or whatever it is. You can't have any, whatever nonsense that is. So what if we had 60 farms? Just 60 family farms that had about 500 layers each. And when we had our farm, we had 500 layers. It was no big deal, believe me. It was just not that big a deal. 60 farms times 500 hens times 250 eggs per hen, 7.5 million eggs. we've got our local egg demands met of some of the most highly nutritious, easily digestible forms of protein on the planet. Next slide. This is what the USDA was telling us back in 1918, the year when I was born. Uncle Sam expects you. It doesn't say Uncle Sam wants you to or thinks it's a good idea. It doesn't say Uncle Sam, suggests that, well, if you sort of... No, Uncle Sam expects you to keep hens and raise chickens. 2 hens in the backyard for each person in the house will keep a family in fresh eggs. 2 hens for each person. The reason they chose that is because of 2, some of the older hens aren't laying as much, the younger ones aren't coming online quite yet. So 2 hens will make you food self-sufficient in protein, meet your egg shed. It says here, in time of peace, a profitable recreation, in time of war, a patriotic duty. Thank you, Uncle Sam. Your United States Department of Agriculture.
1918, you said?
1918. I've got a bunch of these, I collect them. They're fun, too. Next slide, please. Okay, now I toss this in, even though it has to do with health, it's just too much fun not to. National defense and emergency preparedness. If you have, say our community, say Rockbridge County has 60 farmers that's keeping 500 hens each, and the food lines go out. Did you know that at most, let me ask you, at most, your local grocery store has how much food supply on its shelves? At most.
3 days.
You know it. Okay, 3 days. So and in case of an emergency or tsunami or earthquake or whatever it is that causes, it's always food and water are the first things that are the most problems. So I'm not kidding, having family farms and family flocks is a form of emergency preparedness. If we've got the strong local foods and those food lines go out, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. And the State Department and the Defense Department has routinely come out saying that America's weakest points in defense is it's not planes crashing into buildings and it's not people blowing things up. What is it? It's our food and our water supply. That's where we're most vulnerable. That's where we're most vulnerable. I don't think this slide is in here, but there's an ancient poultry proverb. It goes back thousands of years that says whoever controls your food supply controls you. So I'm going to ask you, who controls your food supply? Chickens know it. Next slide, please. So here's what we've gone over today. I've thrown a lot of weirdo things at you, I know, and it's been bizarre. But this is stuff you need to know. We talked about first, do no harm. I mean, and this is what physicians ought to. If they took the oath, I wish they'd practice it. We talked about how prevention is more than just cure. Prevention. That will take care of the 80 to 90 to almost 100% of your problems. We talked about know who you're working with. There's really not a need to treat the whole flock in my book. But then it's different guidelines for the production of commercial versus what you're dealing with at the local level. We talked about gut health and how if you don't have your digestive tract, if you don't preen and take care of your flora and fauna and your bacteria, you're not going to be healthy. That's just the way we've evolved to be. We've also talked about handling, a wonderful exercise out there here. We've talked about top diseases, especially foot care, I think is really important. You learned about egg sheds. Run the number. We could do an egg shed for this group and figure out exactly how many hens we had to be egg self-sufficient. And then we talked about the nutritional considerations, not only of eggs, but also of meat, commercial meats versus heritage meats. Question, Jeff?
Is there any differences in nutrition of an egg about whether it's fertilized or not fertilized?
I have not read any studies saying there's
No
any
differences.
difference at all.
You mean fertilized by a male? By the male chicken? Yeah, there's no differences in nutrition.
How else is it going to be?
No, I'm not, you might have been tying it into some fertilization of eating fertilizer or something like that, so I was jumping the gun.
No. Okay, next.
Thanks, Pat.
Next slide, please. Okay, we've got the Chickens and You workshop series. We're working on it hard this next half year. It kicked off in Richmond, Virginia, and we're going to be issuing pretty soon, within the next month or so, the very first backyard master chicken keeper certification. Somebody had to do it. Yeah, so if you want, next slide, please. Next slide. we're doing. So here's my contact information. My business cards are out there as well. So contact us if we can bring a seminar to a place near you, or you can come up with us. And of course, as we say at the talk show at the end, may the flock be with you, quote the chicken, evermore. God bless everybody.
Give her a hand. Give her a hand. So, a couple quick things, if you could, even if you're ready to go or you have to go, we'll just want to wrap up. These ladies are going to pass out an evaluation. If you would fill this out quietly, I want to have just a couple of closing things so you guys can begin passing those out if you would. And the rain has gone away. What I want to do, a couple things in closing. One is on this evaluation, and it comes to you, if you guys can. We didn't do a spot if you're interested in maybe hosting something like this on your farm or getting further involved in some of the work that we're doing. You can contact me, or you can contact Pat if you're interested in some of the certification. But if you want us to get in contact with you, just write that on there somewhere, and I'll make sure that we add you to a mailing list or an email list or whatever. Be sure and designate that on this evaluation.
You get a schedule of stuff you've got planned.
I can do that for you. You can also, on my particular website, you can go to the centerforpoultry.com and you'll see some of the things that are going on there. There is a website for the Carolina Heritage Poultry Coalition. It's carolinaheritage.poultry.com. All right? It's pretty simple right now, but like you could reach Gary as the president of our coalition. Cynthia's on there. Jennifer, who has the Osterlork, is on that website as well. So while you're filling this out, Harvey, if you could take 30 seconds and say, here's my last big push of encouragement or a thought you wanted to get in for the end of the day, what would it be?
I like Pat's emphasis toward the end about the importance of what we can do in the backyard for food security and food quality. And I truly believe, I don't want to be a doom and gloomer, but I do believe hard times are not past. We are looking at some really hard times economically, and it's going to be very important to know that you have a source of food a lot closer to you than the sources of the supermarket. Go for it!
And of course, when we break here, the books are still out there, and I would encourage you guys to take advantage. These resources will help us, will help you to build those egg sheds. And so I encourage you along those lines. I also want to mention about Gary and Cynthia. There are the chicks that are over there, and if you're interested, they would love to take none of those chicks home. But I also say that if you're around for the Organic Grower School for the weekend, there's a possibility we could arrange, Rocco, we could keep the chicks here if you're going home on Sunday and you wanted to talk with, Gary's going to be around for the weekend. He's actually teaching a couple of the sessions. So he'll be available. Connect with him, get his cell phone number and say, I can't take chicks today, but maybe you can take them on Sunday when you go home, depending on where your travel is. So the chicks are here. They're very, very good stock, and they're available for you. Okay. Also, the Poultry Press, if you want to get the $5 off, remember that's only today. And the other one that I didn't mention, but if you want to come up afterward, if you want to become a member of the American Poultry Association, it's the one that sells the Standard of Perfection, oldest livestock organization in the country. It'd be good for you to be a member. This is $5 off your membership today too, and you can see if you want to do 1 year, 3 year, whatever, you can do that if you fill this out. Both of these, you make them out, not to me, not to Gary, not to Pat, but make them out to the organization, so the American Poultry Association and the Poultry Press, okay? And lastly, Rocco, thank you for hosting us today. It was an awesome. So I would publicly like to thank my wife and a couple of others. Where's Beth? Beth representing OGS. There's Beth. Thank you, Beth, for helping my wife help organize all the food. So thank you, Beth. And thank you, Melissa, for your help today. Who else do I need to Anybody else that's...
Thank you to y'all.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. Yes, Pat has a closing, Nancy.
This is from Oprah Winfrey. She was really emphatic that I bring this message to you, and that is to occupy backyards.
Thanks for completing your evaluations on your chairs, and we'll see you around Organic Growers School the next couple of days if you're planning to stay. Thank you so much for coming. You are dismissed. Be sure to grab books and baby chicks on your way out.